First things first, the topic for today's episode was suggested by a very nice follower of the channel, so a big shout out to J. Christian. And remember, if you too want to share some ideas for future WGTU videos, feel free to drop a comment, contact me on Twitter, or even send me an email. Alright, and with that said, let's talk about empathy. I know it might sound a bit surprising. Empathy seems to be a very real thing, a concept that does tie well into our everyday lives, but not necessarily in the virtual worlds of video games, right? Well, it's actually worth taking a look. Empathy is this ability we have to understand or even feel what someone else is experiencing, and effectively to place ourselves in the other person's position. And to be honest, it encompasses quite a number of mental and emotional processes that aren't always clearly scoped. But something important is that we often cut down empathy in two main components. First, affective empathy, which is mostly based on emotional contagion and is this ability we have to have sympathy and compassion for others and to properly respond to their current emotional state. Second, cognitive empathy, which allows you to understand someone else's mental state and their perspective on the current situation. So, these ideas of feeling like and understanding the other person can therefore be uncorrelated, and you can empathize very strongly emotionally without being very good at getting the other's point. But no matter which one we talk of, empathy is crucial in all kinds of human interactions. And so, given those definitions, we could say that all multiplayer games involve some level of empathy, since by their very nature they recreate social interactions in the context of a video game. As soon as you start to play with other people, it's pretty clear that you'll share some emotional experiences and that you'll need to understand a little bit their motivations, if you wish the experience to be friendly. For example, co-op games obviously expect you to exchange with your partners and work towards solving the puzzle together. But now, take the example of MMOs. In those games, you usually have some in-game chat system that allows you to directly talk to the other players behind their screens. So, basically, you can rely on the classic verbal communication to make sure everyone's on the same page and knows the other's goals. Most of the time, you simply ask or instruct your teammates what they plan on doing to defeat the next boss. You don't really need empathy, it's more about basic communication skills. On the other hand, consider games like Journey, where all the co-op interaction has to be done via movement and subtle interactions. Or even fighting and competitive games like Fall Guys, Counter-Strike or Street Fighter. In those games, you can have allies, but you mainly have opponents. They are the ones who matter the most in high-level game sessions. And to play well in a battle arena and win against the other team, you need to understand your opponent's moves and even predict them. So here, empathy has a tactical purpose. It is an essential skill to efficiently jump in their shoes and counter their actions before they even think of them. In that regard, I feel like Team Fortress 2, or TF2 in short, is a cool example of how empathy is a key element of multiplayer gameplay. Now, it's worth pointing out that here I'll mostly refer to cognitive empathy, because in those kind of adversarial relationships, you'd clearly rather understand than actually feel your opponent's state. But so, in this really nice and cartoony multiplayer first-person shooter game, released by Valve Corporation in 2007, you join either the red or the blue team and you take one of the possible 9 roles to play with your teammates in Capture the Flag, King of the Hill or other kinds of scenarios. You can be an attacker or a defender, and the game is divided in several rounds during which teams switch between the two positions. Of course, being a fully multiplayer game, apart from the practice against bots, Team Fortress 2 has some in-game voice and text chats available. But as we said before, what's more interesting in terms of cognitive empathy is your relationship to your opponents. In TF2, really good players are able to predict where their enemies are going to be, just because they have an extended knowledge of the current map's design, the role's various abilities, and also the good hunting spots. It's as much memory as it is empathy. You need to remember where people could hide, but also to infer from their previous reactions whether they're likely to hide, or rather jump at you instantly. That's typically why AI control bots are easy enough to beat. We often learn quite quickly their patterns and algorithms, and so we get an empathy boost of sorts that allows us to accurately predict all their future moves. Against other humans, however, you have to constantly readapt and reanalyze the situation from various points of view, since each game will most likely mix you with a new pool of players. And since we're talking about mirroring other feelings and slipping in their shoes, we have to have a special focus on the spy. So in Team Fortress 2, the spy is the 9th available role, and it's usually considered one of the hardest to play. It's not that great in direct combat, and it doesn't have a lot of health, but it is amazingly powerful when mastered, and it's all about deception and trickery. Basically, the spy can disguise himself as any member of the friend or opponent team, and effectively look like he's one of them. But the game only goes as far as giving you the props, so it's still up to you to act accordingly to your disguise. And this is clearly where psychology and empathy come into play big time. Really effective spy players are the ones who manage to convince the enemy team that they are on their side for long stressful minutes, before finally stabbing them in the back with the butterfly knife. That, my friends, is a true demonstration of the fact that effective and cognitive empathies can be very, very different things. Finally, I want to take a step back and talk a bit about modes and community content. The classic TF2 game is already a great piece of fun, with crazy character designs and a truly enjoyable gameplay. But in my opinion, it's gotten even better thanks to all the additions done by the community. And that's actually another cool example of empathy that is somewhat at the edge of the video game, but pretty interesting nonetheless. The very idea of letting people take an open artwork like a moddable game and adding further improvements relies on the belief that they can contribute valuable and enjoyable content, and therefore that they understand the needs of other players. It's about having a common culture, similar emotions or thoughts, and building on those conventions and shared dreams to do even more. Modding is about as old as video games, and to me, even though it can sometimes lead to slippery slopes, it remains a proof that players exchange more than tweets and comments on forums. They also have deeper wishes to express, and some are devoted to doing their best to fill the gaps left by the big companies and give their fellow teammates what they want. So, what if Team Fortress 2, in all its delectable dizziness, was a good opportunity to practice empathy, without risking too much sympathy or emotional contagion? And please tell me in the comments, don't you think the pyro is just the most sympathetic of them all? Just look at all those waves of rainbow love! I hope you enjoyed this video, as always it was a real treat to make. Don't forget to like and share it if you did, and to turn on the notifications to not miss the next ones. Of course, if you have any other idea of games that tell us something without us noticing, please go ahead and share it in the comments. Thanks a lot for watching, and stay tuned for the rest of this series.